Hey everyone, Tactics here with my final plus 20 walkthrough of Dragonflight Season 3, where in this video I'll be showing off some Prot Warrior action in Waycrest Manor. I'll be walking you guys through the route that we used in this video, some tips and tricks to help you get this key done, and even point out a few mistakes that we did make here and how you can avoid them in your own runs. I already have walkthroughs just like this one for every other Season 3 dungeon over on my channel. Plus, in the future, I will be putting out walkthroughs of 0.1% title level keys and kind of show you some more advanced strategies there. So if that interests you, please do subscribe to the channel for more content. And otherwise, let's get into the run here. 1.25 times speed. Nice big pull off the top here. As always, you got to get all these soul essences together. And we're actually going to move through here onto the witches just because honestly, this pool isn't big enough, need some more stuff here. So the big thing you want to keep in mind here as a tank, of course, point that shadow cleave because there's going to be a captain here away from your group. You want stops onto the actual spirits here, just like you would in a normal pool. We are lusting, getting a little chaotic here because of that Waycrest Manor classic camera angle, but those souls have very little health. Now, what you're going to probably see in a lot of high keys is you're going to see an expansion of this first pull, either what we're doing here in this video or potentially pulling some of the hunting lodge mobs out and onto that first pack in the foyer. I think a big reason for that is Heartsbane Triad is a lot easier to deal with now, so you don't need to lust that. So you want to get a big lust with a big trash pull off the top in pretty much all cases, and that's a nice way to just kind of get that done with all your cooldowns. The other thing, of course, all doors are open, so you have a lot more flexibility in where you're pulling mobs to in this very first pull here. But one caveat is the witch spawns. So, as maybe some of you have noticed, witch spawns are on a weekly rotation, so the witch you get here may not be the same. In this example, we actually got the interrupt witch, which is kind of a bit of a pain to deal with, right? It requires a little bit more interrupt. You need to interrupt that volley attack specifically, but also the random target hit is also quite dangerous. So you want to make sure you put kicks into that and also keep a kick for the captain. You can also roll the etch witch in this area, which very, very careful. If you get etch on you, you need to personal. It is exceptionally scary. I got tuned quite up quite a bit from PTR. Or you can roll no witch. So just try and see, what are the actual witch rotation that week. I don't know, maybe eventually there's going to be a site kind of tracks it so you know what's what. But at least from what I've seen so far, it appears that it's a weekly rotation and that within a week, it's always going to be the same witch spawning in the same location. So keep that in mind. Once this pack starts getting low, though, we are going to go into this room here, the boss room, and pull, I believe, both sides here. Yeah, both acolytes. Just group them all up. Watch the aggro a little bit. And these guys, you can stop or kick this Infected Thorns. Again, not sure why it functions differently than the Witch Infected Thorns in the Courtyard, but this one is a stoppable cast and interruptible, so just do that. Otherwise, we're moving into the first boss here, where a reminder, your interrupts that you want to focus on are the two inactive witches. So these witches that take no damage right now or have like a 99% DR, they are the ones you want to be kicking. The active witch is always shooting their interruptible ability into the tank. So that is just the tank damage. As a Prot Warrior 2, you can spell reflect that back, so it's nice. The random target damage where you're actually scared of people dying is on the off mobs. So there you see they're targeting random players, the two inactive ones. That is what you want to kick. Of course, they each also have different stuff in phase. You can curse dispel someone if you have those available to reduce that dot damage. Otherwise, stay moving. This is the biggest thing I see people die to is you don't stay moving during the malady phase because you'll stack up a dot on you. Very, very scary. So make sure you keep jumping and stuff like that to clear those stacks. Otherwise, Jagged Nettles. Make sure that you personal if you're targeted by Jagged Nettles because it deals quite a bit of damage and has like a Grievous-like effect where it'll stay on you if you don't get healed up. So keep in mind, healers, make sure you focus that target up. Otherwise, just keep on top of kicks on the off targets. Do not worry about kicking the main target. And like I've said, this boss is quite a bit easier now than it was back in BFA with the nerfs that happened to it. So you're really, really not too concerned with lusting this boss fight. Even on tyrannical weeks, you're much better off just getting a lust on a first pull with all your cooldowns going and do like a big pull that way. And that saves much more time. Moving on, though, go into the hallway here. And you get a nice little pull here. There's going to be two captains in this pack. Notably, this 2-pack can patrol all the way up up the stairs here, so they might not be right here. They might be upstairs and patrol down, so range, be aware of that. If they aren't here initially, just move over to the side, and tanks, make sure you get ready to pick it up. Otherwise, it's just one kick per captain, and spare kicks go into the Disciple here. You also want to make sure that you are stopping the Disciple cast. Not Runic Bolt, that's the kick. They have like a Spellbound, something or other. It's a Silence. There it is, Spellbind. Just stop that. Don't worry about kicking it, because you already are using 2 kicks on the captains and then all your other kicks on Runic Bolt. So I just see that Disciples also have the least health, so they will die very quickly, like you see there. Fairly straightforward pull here. Then we go into the Courtyard, and Jagged Hounds are a little bit spooky depending on the affix. I actually think we have some deaths here. They proc on deaths for some reason. I don't know why, but they do. So Sanguine, they'll drop a ton of Sanguines. Spitefuls, they'll drop a ton of Spitefuls. And as you see here, Bursting goes all the way up. So it's very, very spooky. We didn't have Mass there. I think we've got some Dwarves and stuff. Immunes out to survive it. But of course, we did have 2 deaths there just because it's just so much Bursting. Something to keep in mind, though, when you're, especially in the first pull, when you have like a billion dogs in the pack here. Like I said, the Thorn Shaper, they just spam cast Infected Thorn, so stops don't actually put the spell on cooldown, so you do have to actually kick that. That's why you only ever pull 2 at a time here. So you 2 in that previous pull, 2 here with the mini boss, and again, there's a few more Dragon Hounds, so be aware of that. Otherwise, there's not really a ton to talk about. I think so some of these mobs actually are damaged by standing in the fire here on the ground. I have been told Matron is one of them. I haven't been able to confirm this myself. Outside of this, what I have been able to confirm is the dogs and the one Thorn Guard that you pull, that we killed here. Those guys do take damage from the fire. I haven't been able to confirm Matron does, but I've heard that Matron does, so potentially something you could do to kill them a little bit faster during them on the fire. Otherwise, here we are going into the boss. I think on a higher key, if you only had like a couple minutes left on your Bloodlust timer, you would probably be pulling trash around the Raw the Gluttonous and pull that stuff out into the Courtyard and do that until you got Bloodlust, because this is one of the scarier bosses in the dungeon for sure. So basically, our general strat is to clear as little as possible. And the reason for that is, of course, it's relatively scary to do that clear, lots of raid damage, etc. There's a few cheesy things we can do here, which you might have just seen. Certain specs have the ability to break these roots. Now, pre-shapeshifting is fixed. It no longer works, so druids and shamans can't do that. But stun breaks do work. So you're going to see here, Mage, I believe, is Ice Flows. They can blink these thorns. So boom, he blinks, he's out. Done. Easy. Dragons can deep breath the thorns, so you kind of have to pre-deep breath, I believe. Maybe we can do it after, but they're able to deep breath that stun as well, which is useful. Obviously, paladins can bubble themselves, or they can put bop on someone else as well. So there are a few ways to break it, which can be good, especially if you're running with an augmentation evoker, because of course, if one of your DPSers get picked and you have an augmentation evoker, it's much harder to break them out in time. So just make sure you are prepared for that as well, and just, you know, defensive as needed for that, externals, that kind of thing, especially if you have a slow break on the thorns. In terms of actually clearing the boss's stacks, what you want to make sure is you're never clearing while a soul thorns is active, and be prepared immediately after the clear for someone to get soul thorns. Make sure you make some distance from the boss and then bring the boss away from the initial spot, just so the fiery kind of ghosts don't end up killing like the healer in particular, but they can also aggro to some other players as well just initially, so be aware of them. Otherwise, this boss is just kind of all about how high stack wise your tank can go. I believe I do a clear here at some point, just kind of, again, staggering my defensive cooldowns. Again, Prot Warrior is actually very, very good against this boss in general, just because the blockable damage is pretty much everything, right? So all the damage intake is blockable, and so them just being able to have perma shield block uptime is very, very good, right? Very strong against that high physical damage. And so, yeah, I'm going to end up breaking this fire here at around 47 stacks. The pulsing damage goes out, right? We pop our defensive Zephyr, Rally, and some personals, and then we move away there. We have the Soul Thorns on the Aug Evoker, so it's not the end of the world. He gets slammed a little bit by those spirits, like I saw. We didn't quite make enough distance. We ideally would have been like over here as an example. So but you saw those kind of red spirits, and then they disappeared, right? So at this point, we've done our clear. I'm now going to just hold the boss for the rest of the fight. So depending on the level of the key, depending on your tank spec, you're going to be able to hold this boss for more or less. My guess is on high tyrannical keys, you're probably going to be looking at doing 2 clears over the course of this boss fight and killing him within that third boss phase, I guess. So you're going to distribute your defensives kind of accordingly, but it's going to depend on how that damage kind of scales. Otherwise, again, clearing this raw trash, you're going to see me pull a lot of mobs kind of out into the hallway here, almost dying, not even close, and just so we have room to actually see everything out in this hallway, right? Because it's quite clustered at the beginning there. If you remember that first pull I showed, right, your camera angle is going all over the place, and it kind of sucks. And so pulling stuff out into the courtyard, well, it is a little bit more time consuming to do and maybe potentially dangerous if you don't save the mobility as a tank, that kind of thing. It's definitely worth it for just the nice camera angle. Of course, Gorger's previous strat was to go on the fountain here, and the Gorgers wouldn't jump to you. That has also been fixed, so you can't do that any longer. Otherwise here, I'm just kind of grabbing packs. The one thing I'm watching for is the number of Gorgers I am pulling when I'm pulling these packs out. You don't want to pull more than 2 at a time. They're very scary, and in general, right, range you want to be somewhat spread because they will leap to you and they will bleed anyone near you. So range want to be spread for those Gorgers, and you don't want to pull more than 2 at a time. Otherwise, you're kind of free to do whatever you can survive as a tank. Not a big deal. The one thing you want to notice is initially when I came in, the pat of Gorgers, there's one to your right here, which you can probably see as soon as I turn. See, there's 2 Gorgers right here on the nameplates. They pat all the way down here. When I came in, they weren't there, so that's why I pulled the pack in front of me, because I know there's 2 Gorgers in there as well. So that's kind of the choice. If these Gorgers are right here, do not pull the stuff in the room. Otherwise, you're going to have 4 Gorgers, and that's a nightmare. If these 2 aren't here, then go ahead, pull those guys in the room. Now you're going to see I'm going to go up and pull up to those Gorgers. Boom, grab them, and then charge on this pig out. And get out in a relatively safe compared to that first time for sure. Around the corner here just to get them. Watch aggro, of course, on this when they come out. We have the rogue insta-trixing, but you want to be careful if you don't have aggro help with a hunter, rogue, that kind of thing. People need to be aware of aggro because you're not going to be able to hit them a ton in there alone, right? You want to grab them, get the heck out, and then get aggro around here, so just be aware of that. But again, this is kind of rinse and repeat on all this trash here, pulling it out, watching the number of Gorgers. And then we're going to end up going into the boss, I believe. Yeah, with the next... I don't know if we actually had anything in here. Yeah, we didn't. And we have lust now, right? So we're just like, okay, we're going to rip it on this boss. But again, I think ideally on a higher key level as well, if you're going slower, maybe you would clear this area a little bit. And then when lust was off cooldown, you would fight the Goliath boss, because you don't really need lust for this. Big thing for tanks, of course, just never leave melee. The boss, if you ever leave melee and he's not casting a spell, he's just going to kill your entire party, so don't do that. So just need to be aware. A lot of things can actually be melded on this fight. So not Tenderize will just repick a target, but funnily enough, Rotten Expulsion, which spawns the slimes, it actually targets a player here. And I believe, you can't really see because of my nameplates, it's targeting Mills here, so it's targeting our Evoker. If this targeted a rogue or a mage or whatever, the rogue can actually vanish this. You can meld it, you can greater invisit, whatever, and that would actually not spawn any slimes or puddles on the ground. It's kind of wild, So something you can do. It's not really super useful. It's just interesting, I guess. Otherwise, try not to clog up melee too much. As a tank, you can honestly avoid a lot of these mechanics. As long as you're not AFK in a puddle, you're pretty much fine. See here, we are going to start CCing these servants just so they don't actually get eaten by the boss here. Stuns, those kind of things, just to make sure he doesn't get eaten. And as a tank here, I usually just kind of AFK these Tenderizes to try and bait them over here. As you can see here, this is lucky, so that means their casters and stuff don't need to move. And as you can see, it's not really doing a ton of damage to me. And again, these swirlies, they'll tick me a little bit up here, but that's it. It's one little hit. And as a tank, you're not too worried about it. Again, the bigger thing is not leaving melee, and that's why, I mean, I like chilling in that spot over here in general, and it lets other people sit over here. And sometimes I bait a bunch of those Tenderizes, sometimes I don't. Big thing for Tenderizes too is the hitbox is a bit of a lie. The closer you are to the boss, the easier it is to dodge, so range, make sure you are staying relatively close there. We are going to kill this guy though. Moving forward, I think that was actually a good example there, right? Hit Mills here, where look where it's targeted. Look where he's standing. Boom, still hits him, right? Much bigger than its team, so try and be closer to the boss. Another area where you can get an RNG witch spawn, it can be no witch or it can be any of the other 2 witch options, so be aware of that. This one is the etch witch, which again, very, very scary. Etch cranks for some reason, so this is a big personal angle. Moving downstairs though, we are going to run down and pull the mini boss because I am a prot warrior and I get to spell reflect. I think in a lot of routes, if you're not running a prot warrior, you probably will end up skipping Matron Elma here, just because she's a very healthy mob, fairly scary if you can't, spell reflect it. She does the tank hit, she does a cast unit kick, and then Dreadmark on a random player now, which is a curse you can dispel. And of course, this boss is dying super fast because I'm spell reflecting not every, but every other, I believe, decaying touch here. Just a fair bit of damage. This is our mistake. So we actually, with the witch rotation and stuff, we should have pulled these two mobs here. And I think we should have skipped one pack upstairs, is what it's done in Rawl's area. But we forget to pull these guys here, so we rock by. And honestly, what you probably would have done instead, because that, I believe, is always an Etch Witch, and you don't want to pull Etch Witches, like I said. If you're feeling, you probably want to pull these two here, which is just a Soul Essence and a Diviner. Two relatively low health mobs. You want to be careful of butt pulling these packs, but if you really wanted to maximize your count, you'd pull these guys in. You're going to see we're not going to be having count at the end of this dungeon. We're going to be off by one singular mob, which is great. RNG Witch spawns, baby, not planned. This pull, I believe we were not trying to pull this Soul Charmer up on the top here. We were trying to pull everything but the Soul Charmer, so this is going to go a little bit wild. Two Soul Charmers is rough. Basically here, you're going to let this Diviner free cast. You just don't have the kicks. If you don't have like a Vengeance Demon Hunter to just AoE silence that mob, it's not possible. What we're going to be doing is using stops on these Soul Essences when we can, and we need kicks on the volleys 100%. And then their random target bolts secondarily, because their bolts hit hard. Candles, you want to be pre-moving just like that to get them out of it ASAP. If you've kicked just before a candle, they will move. If you haven't, you may need to actually kick them right after the candle before they'll move. And you see here how much damage those soul bolts are doing, right? If they pick the same target, that person is just dead. Boom, there I am, moving right out of the candles because, of course, it's a big DR. So that's kind of how you would get it. It does not LOS here, notably, right? We didn't have a kick, I think. Yeah, we were out of kicks, and we had two volleys going off. So it was like, oh, ice block, cloak. I tried to LOS, didn't work, and our priest just got one shot. So that's the issue there. If you don't have, like, a prot paladin specifically or a vengeance, it's really tough to actually keep kicks on these soul charmers. Even vengeance, because I believe soul or silent sigil won't work on them because they're lieutenants. So it's kind of rough to do that if they don't instantly die. So keep that in mind. Usually we try not to pull all these guys. And again, if you had pulled the pack, I believe that I mentioned upstairs, you wouldn't need to pull this guy in the back. Though, of course, it can be a little strange in a pug. Here we go. To leave a mob up in this boss room. People need to be aware of it and not play on that side of the room. Anyways, Lord and Lady Waycrest here. Fairly straightforward fight. Again, you're going to see big prot warrior damage because I get to spell reflect this. It's nice. Pathogen, right? Just don't insta-dispel it if you don't need to. Get out, then dispel it. Avoid swirlies. There's really not a ton to talk about. Little tip, if you're a prop paladin, I guess you can stand here, or here rather, and throw shields at Lady Waycrest and interrupt her, which is fun. You can reduce the party damage that way because she just random casts essentially, but I don't think it's super necessary, at least on this key level. Potentially on very high Tyrannical, it's going to be super value though. Other than that, I mean, bosses don't do a ton. Right, get some nice even cleave. Notably, Lady Waycrest starts down here with more health, I believe. So you can put some damage into her, focus her down a little bit more than Lord Waycrest. Though if you're scared, Lord Waycrest is more dangerous in my opinion, because of course he does the tank hit and he puts that disease out. So if you want to just make the fight easier, you can focus down Lord Waycrest. Otherwise, if you want to even cleave Lady Waycrest. And then we go through here and Gloom Horrors. Pretend we have full count now. But with the change of these mobs where they only jump one at a time, and of course they are always going to only jump to the furthest target available, they're quite easy to just pull onto this boss now. You just have one player basically bait outside here like that, and they're always going to jump to them. And everyone else is going to take no damage, right? You can see literally one person's taking damage. So this is actually quite simple to actually pull into this boss every time. The problem is going to be, again, on deaths, bursting, spiteful, sanguine. Keep that in mind. Otherwise, again, another very straightforward boss, where you just want to make sure you get a CC on the Slaver for the Death Lens cast. And you want to make sure that you are throwing the fire at the dead bodies there, or whenever they are dead. You don't need to save this to try and get a double hit, right? You can always just do it one at a time. You get enough fire to do for every single slaver, I believe. So it's not a big deal, but also it's not a big deal if they get rezzed either. This boss fight is just quite easy as long as you stay on top of your CCs. And then, like I said, we're going to teleport out and get some trash after this, but if you had just done that one change I mentioned, you will not need to do that. But that wraps up this run, guys. Hopefully you found it useful, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like it. Like I mentioned, 0.1% title level key run walkthrough, showing you those routes, showing you those high-end advanced techs that people are using, and of course more coverage on the beta of War Within. Super hyped for that expansion. If you have any questions at all regarding this dungeon, please drop those down in the comments below, and also be sure to stop by my Twitch channel at Tactics, where I stream all of my key pushing, mythic raid progression, all that good stuff from a tank POV. As always, shout out to all of my subscribers on Patreon. Really appreciate your support. Otherwise, thanks everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.